Hai, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Bunga Kirana from English Education, Universitas Muhammadiyah, Semarang. Today, I will talk about verb. Do you know what is verb? A verb is a word or a combination of words that indicates action or a state of being or condition. A verb is the part of a sentence that tells us what the subject performs. Verbs are the heart of English sentence. Example: Jacob walks in the morning. Jacob walks in the morning is a usual action. Mike is going to school is a condition of action. Albert does not like to walk is a negative action. Anna is a good girl is a state of being. Verbs are related to a lot of other factors like the subject, person, number, tense, mood, voice, and others. Next, we move to what is verb phrase. Verb phrase is a collection of words in English consisting of two words or more, where there is no subject and predicate element which has a function is as an information provider. Then, is the same between phrase and verb phrase? Of course different. Verb phrase is a collection of words consisting of several verbs, such as main verb, auxiliary verb, linking verb, transitive verb, intransitive verb, and others, which form a sentence with a certain function. Next, the material of verb phrase or VP depends on the type or class of verb used. First, transitive verb. Second, intransitive verb. Third, disjunctive verb. 4. Intensive verb. 5. Complex transitive verb. 6. Prepositional verbs. 7 is imperative verbs. The one is transitive verb. A transitive verb is a verb that can take a direct object. In other words, the action of a transitive verb is done to someone or something. Most verbs are transitive. A transitive verb contrasts with an intransitive verb, which is a verb that does not take a direct object. In other words, it is not done to someone or something. It only involves the subject. And we have an example sentence. Cat hugged the baby. The sentence contains noun phrase and verb phrase. Cat is a noun. Hug, and then verb phrase contains verb and noun phrase. The hug is verb transitive, and then noun phrase contains determine and noun. The is a determine. Baby is a noun. The baby is a direct object. Next, we move to intransitive verb. An intransitive verb is defined as a verb that does not take a direct object. That means there's no word in the sentence that tells us who or what received the action of the verb. Next, we have an example sentence. Ken snorts. The sentence contains noun, phrase, and verb phrase. Ken is a noun. Snorts is a verb, intransitive. And you know what is the difference between a transitive verb and intransitive verb? A transitive verb is a verb that requires a direct object, which is a noun, pronoun, or noun phrase that follows the verbs and completes the sentence meaning by indicating the person or thing that receives the action of the verbs. The direct object typically answers the question what or whom. The kids like pickles. That really annoys me. Have they sold their house yet? An intransitive verb is not used with a direct object. If something comes after an intransitive verb that is in the position usually inhabited by the direct object, it doesn't answer what or whom. Instead, it answers a question like where, when, how, or how long. For example, her car died suddenly last week. Someone was cawing loudly. A single verb can have both transitive and intransitive use. They are playing soccer. They've been playing all afternoon. A transitive verb can also have an indirect object, which is a noun, pronoun, or noun phrase that comes before direct object and indicates the person or things that receive what is being given or done. Many common verbs can be used with both direct and indirect object. In the following example, indirect object is in italics. For example, find her a chair. Can you read me the letter? Who gave me her lawyers the confirmation? He's saying Kathleen a piece. After we study about transitive and intransitive verbs, we move to distransitive verbs. Distransitive verbs are verbs that can use direct and indirect objects. Of course, distransitive verbs can also only use direct objects. Indirect objects may be placed in front of the direct objects or after direct objects. By starting with the preposition to or for, forming a prepositional phrase. Sentence: Ray told the children a story. Sentence contains noun phrase and verb phrase. Ray is a noun, and the verb phrase contains verbs, noun phrase, and noun phrase. Told is a distransitive verb. The is a determined. Children is a noun. A is a determined. Story is a noun. In this sentence, the indirect object in front of the direct objects. And these transitive verbs, this means that the transitive verb allows only two objects, although it can be also followed by a direct object. The indirect object appears after the direct object is placed with a preposition. Well, if it is located before the direct object, it does not need a preposition. Example, he gave her the letter. The letter is the direct object. What he gave and her is the indirect object. The person he gave it to, the sentence can also be written, he gave the letter to her. Next, when we learn a new language, There are usually different grammar points that we find tricky along the way, and English falls into that category too. Do you know what is intensive verbs are in English? If you don't know, then it's lucky that we are going to talk about that. We use intensive verbs to describe the subject. Intensive verbs are also called copular verbs, are usually followed by a noun or a noun phrase. An adjective or a prepositional phrase, intensive means to focus on one thing. In the case, the subject, the words or phrases following an intensive verb work as the subject complement. This means they apply to the subject, not the verbs. Example, Rose is a student. The focus of the sentence is Rose and what she is. Another sentence, Thomas looks very young for his age. The focus of the sentence is Thomas and what he looks like. I have a tree diagram. The sentence is Sally become a doctor. The sentence contains noun phrase and verb phrase. Sally is a noun and verb phrase contains verbs, intensive verbs, and noun phrase. The noun phrase contains determine and noun. Sally is a noun, become is a verb, intensive verbs, a is a determine, and doctor is a noun. Next, we move to complex transitive verbs. In English grammar, a complex transitive verb is a verb that requires both a direct object and another object or an object complement. Complex transitive verbs in English include believe, consider, declare, elect, find, judge, keep, know, label, make, name, resume, pronounce, prove, read, regard, and think. I have an example. Cat talk John a fool. Sentence contains noun phrase and verb phrase. Noun phrase contains noun. The verb phrase contains complex verbs, noun phrase and noun phrase. The noun phrase contains noun and noun phrase is contains determine and noun. Cat is a noun, talk is a complex, John is a noun, a is a determine, fool is a noun. Next, note that verbs often belong to more than one category. Matt can function as a complex transitive. For example, her talkless remarks made him unhappy, and also as an ordinary transitive verb. For example, she made a promise. The adjective or noun phrase that qualifies or renames the subject, the object that appears before it is sometimes called an object predicate or object predicative. A complex transitive verb has two complements: an argument, noun phrase, direct object, and either a predicate noun phrase or an adjective phrase. There is a special relationship between the two complements of a complex transitive verb. The predicate NP or AP says something about or describe the direct objects, just as the predicate noun phrase that is complement of a linking verb describe the subject. The predicate noun phrase or adjective phrase is either currently true of the direct objects or comes to be true of the direct object as a result of the action of the verb. And we have prepositional verbs. A prepositional verb is an idiomatic expression that commands a verb and preposition to make a new verb with a distinct meaning. Some examples of prepositional verbs in English are care for, long for, apply, approve of, add to, result in, count on, and deal with. I have an example sentence. Sally landed on the table. The sentence contains noun phrase and verb phrase. Noun phrase contains noun, verb phrase contains complex verbs, and prepositional phrase contains prepositional and noun phrase. Noun phrase contains determined and noun. Sally is a noun, land is complex verb, on is a prepositional, the is a determined, table is a noun. The preposition is a prepositional verb is generally followed by a noun or pronoun, and thus prepositional verbs are transitive. A prepositional verb consists of a verb plus a particle which is clearly a preposition. For example, look at, stand for, rely on. These are mostly lexically strongly stressed with a primary stress going on the verbs. Thus, look at has the same stress patterns as edit or borrow. The second element, the last is imperative verb. An imperative verb is one that tells someone to do something so that the sentence it is in becomes an order or command. For example, in this sentence, a command outlining an action for that must be done. Fold your clothes up. The imperative verb is fold. Imperative verbs are verbs that create an imperative sentence. Example, sentence that give an order or command. When reading an imperative sentence, it will always sound like the speaker is pushing someone around. Imperative verbs don't leave room for question or discussion, even if the sentence has polite tone. For example, give me that book, clean your rooms, do your homework, take the dog for a walk, please don't touch that, do come to visit us whenever you're in town. I have an example diagram. Sentence is close the doors. The sentence contains verb phrase. The verb phrase contains verbs and noun phrase. Verbs contains transitive. The noun phrase contains determined and noun. Clause is a transitive. Determined. The is a determined. Door is a noun. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.